I'm Jason Curtin, Vice President for Advancement and Alumni Engagement and Chair of the Centennial Steering Committee. I'm delighted to have Brian Russo from Delmarva Public Media to serve as our moderator this evening, and must give a quick shout out to Professors Naya Brown, who is in the back, and Aaron Johnson, who could not be with us, who serve as chairs of our Academic and Educational Events Committee for the Centennial. Thank you, Naya. As I turn it over, yes. Applause. As I turn it over to Brian, let me first say that I have had the pleasure of serving all three of these presidents in my role and have genuinely appreciated their passion and dedication to Salisbury University at various stages. I don't have a podium, so I'm just gonna have to do this, winging it, and this is not what they taught me. At different moments in time, and I've learned so much from you as leaders and as a friend. Thank you for being here this evening, and we look forward to tonight's conversation. Brian.
Good, sir. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Brian Russo. I'm the Chief Content Officer of Delmarva Public Media. As a journalist, I've covered all three of you. I've been here for the last 3 years, so I've only had the pleasure of working with Dr. Lepre. But I'm very excited to be here, very excited to be asked, very honored to be a part of the Centennial celebration here at this fine institution. We're going to start on somewhat of a personal note. All three of you came to Salisbury University after being a president or a senior leader at another institution. So when you got here to a place that was so unfamiliar, what were your first impressions of the university? And then how did that natural sense of what you thought you were getting into change once you got here? Let's start with Dr. Dudley Eschbach.
I know. We have microphones. There you go.
Well, am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, I was first told to say that my best hires while I was here were Clifton Griffin and Christy Weir. Well, I mean, yeah. I ran into them coming in. And those of you who know me know I always follow instructions, right? So I wanted to be sure and do that. You know, I had been to the campus. I actually spoke at the inauguration of Bill Merwin when he came as president, and I loved the campus. What surprised me, really, was how friendly the campus seemed to be, and that it felt so much smaller than the number of students that are here. And of course, the beauty of the campus, the fact that it's an arboretum, has that wonderful acknowledgement and status. And just got to give Madam President a shout out here. I think it's tough to maintain the beauty of a place. A lot of institutions today have allowed their infrastructure, you know, they haven't kept up with their issues in terms of the physical campus, and it's just beautiful here, so thank you. So it's fun to be back. I'm going to stop there so that we get to the other questions, but surprises again. I had been a pres for 4 years before coming here, and just found that this institution, in terms of the quality of the students and the faculty and the staff, it was just amazing. It was humbling to become president here.
Dr. White, let's turn to you. What were your initial impressions of the university, and how did your perceptions of this job change once you got here?
Well, I was certainly familiar with the institution before I came. My Aunt Harriet graduated from Salisbury State College in the early 1950s, and many members of my family had been here. So I had been to Ocean City before as a younger man and passed through Salisbury many times, so I was roughly familiar. But I asked a lot of questions before I came, and the answers were really good. The place was in terrific financial shape. Thank you, Dr. Janet. The campus was spectacular. Thank you, Dr. Janet. And there, in the list of deferred maintenance, there were no gotchas. There were no bad surprises there. So really, I came in with a very good expectation of what the campus was like, and it was just a really nice thing. My steepest learning curve was learning how to work with the system office, and because that was something that was completely different from anything that I had experienced before.
Dr. Lepre.
Those good points from both of my predecessors. I think for me the thing that was interesting is the when you're interviewing to be a president, or at least when I was interviewing to be the president here, I really had never been to campus, and so you go through the whole process. It was a Zoom, and then it was an in-person meeting at a hotel, and then I was in Baltimore, and I had never been to the Eastern Shore. I really didn't know very much about it other than the research that you do on the internet. And but I fell in love with the people I was meeting, and I really loved the chancellor. And really, he sold me on all the things that they've just mentioned about what the campus was like, what the people were like, what the students were like, which really attracted me just in terms of the kinds of students who come to SU. So I had an idea of what it was going to be like, and then when I got here, it was just that times 1,000 in terms of wonderful things. But I can tell one quick story, which I think sort of exemplifies it, is I'd never been to campus, and Eli's out there somewhere, and he'll remember this, I think. Actually, I think you'll remember this, too. And they were sort of sneaking me onto campus. They had said, don't go on until, because I hadn't been announced yet, and I'm like, okay. And so we drove in, and we met in the parking lot of Siegel Stadium, in the maroon and gold lot. And he was sitting in an SUV, like literally one of the ones like with the blacked out. They're like, go in. They're like, go in and sit. Chuck is in there. Go in there. Go talk to Dr. White. I was like, okay. And it was just the oddest experience. And he was in there with a list, and he goes, here are the things I want you to know. And I'm like, okay. But so it was this wonderful introduction to how much we care about one another. Because it's like, not only was he telling me all the good things, but he's like, here are some things that are still to do, and here are the things that I'm thinking about. And I just felt supported from the moment that I got here. And of course, because it was a beautiful lacrosse day, I also got a sense of that Seagull spirit. And it was just a wonderful introduction to that first experience, and it's just been amazing since.
Fantastic. The great American songwriter Randy Newman once said that it's lonely at the top. And in my occupation, getting to interview people, whether they're public figures or whether they're politicians, elected officials, just interesting people, that do interesting jobs throughout the community. One of my my favorite things is seeing behind the curtain a little bit. And so for the three of you as university presidents, what is it about this occupation, about this job at this university that maybe the public doesn't see? Dr. Eschbach.
If you'd like me to start, I never wanted to be an administrator. I was a faculty member who kind of took pot shots at the administration and didn't trust anybody in the administration. So it was kind of strange to go over to the dark side, And that happened in part because my husband was switching careers, and I hope it's not too crass to say we needed a little extra money. But then I loved it, and I came into that and just found how wonderful, how much I enjoyed, being able to make an impact, to get some things done. I still loved my teaching, and I'm grateful for my colleagues, Corinne, Puville, and others who welcomed me back to the department once I stepped down from the presidency. But it was very lonely. It was lonely at the top. I'm a people person. And you always have to kind of maintain a little bit of distance. And that was uncomfortable for me. So now I'm happy that I can be Janet.
Dr. White.
I think one of the things that probably most people don't understand is that most presidents don't simply shout orders. And it's a collaborative process. And you have to do a lot of listening and plant a lot of seeds in order for those seeds to eventually grow and blossom. And decisions really are made by consensus. In all of the executive staff meetings that we had during my presidency, and most of my executive staff are actually here in the room, we never took a vote. rarely simply made the decision in the room, but we talked about things and came to consensus and came to agreement. And the same thing happens at the faculty senate and staff senate levels, and all of the consultation that we did for the major decisions in the university. So things don't happen very quickly sometimes, but they are very collaborative.
Dr. Lepre, turning to you, is it still lonely at the top?
Actually, yes and no, right? Yes and no, but I have, people here are amazing,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes that, and maybe this is going to sound weird, sometimes I'm happy for the loneliness, because there comes a moment in a day when I'm like, I'm not sure I can smile anymore. You know, I don't know. I don't know if y'all that resonates with you, but so sometimes you sort of are like, I wish I had a few minutes of, you know, of alone time. But I think the loneliness you're speaking of is a little bit different than it's that sort of professional distance that you have to keep from people because of, right, the position. I think the thing that, and maybe people do realize it, is that you're never, ever turned off. And my phone is never turned off. The ringer is always on, and I always knew Dane Faust, who was our Vice President of Student Affairs. If he was calling me anytime after 10 p.m., it was never good. Yeah. And you know, and then all of a sudden you're back at it. And if you're out at the grocery store, you're still on. And if you're wearing Salisbury gear anywhere, you're on. And it can be tiring, because you're just like, I'm just a normal human being who happens to be doing this very cool job. Right. But it's very interesting. It's a very interesting job.
Well, thank you, all three of you, for pulling back the curtain, if you will, just for a moment. And so let's look back. You know, this is the 100th year anniversary. We are going to spend the entire Centennial year looking back, and of course looking ahead as well. But, you know, Salisbury University has seen remarkable change and some deep continuity across generations of leadership. So this is sort of a three-part question, and I'll ask each of you one part of it. Dr. Dudley Eschbach, we'll start with you. You were, of course, the longest-serving president of the three people here for 18 years, which, if you look at the current average for a university president, that's much longer. The average is about 5 to 6 years. So, of course, you've seen so many things happen at SU during your tenure. For you, what stands out as your most significant challenge? And talk about your proudest achievement.
You know, harking back to one of your comments earlier, it was a surprise to me that the universities were all funded differently in terms of levels of state support. And I think I ruffled some feathers from time to time as I fought to try to get the board, that is the University System of Maryland Board of Regents, people in system office to give us a better deal. And that was always a frustration. We did a lot better on the capital project side, obviously. And there was one of the things I loved about Salisbury, you could get creative. Like they had a capital projects queue, and for some reason Salisbury never seemed to be up towards the top. But through the generosity of some of the people who are here today, and folks who are not here, we were able to get some major gifts that helped us leverage the state funding. So on the capital, because these were non-fungible, I mean, you had your capital project funds and your operating dollars. So obviously a point of pride for me. I didn't feel that Salisbury got its fair shake all the time. And that was my goal, to try to improve on that situation. And I think you know, we changed the look of the Route 13 corridor. We were able to grow without infringing too much on the surrounding communities. The foundation board helped us do a lot of those things. I'm looking over at Henry Hanna, who was my first chairman of the foundation board. And I do remember you're taking off your watch, Henry, when a board meeting would start and it was time for the president's report, and he would put his watch down and go, Dr. Janet.
Dr. White, your time leading Salisbury University coincided with an extraordinary period globally. And of course, that's the COVID pandemic. Looking back, how did that shape your leadership? And what achievement during that time, in your mind, best reflects the impact that you tried to make here at Salisbury University?
Well, I'd like to think that it didn't change my personal leadership style very much, but it did fundamentally change the way that we worked together. So I give a lot of credit to Chancellor Perman, who very early on in the pandemic, I think it was early February, started having electronic meetings with all of the presidents and vice presidents over Zoom, and gave us access to the best science that was available, kept us informed about what was going on, what was coming down the pike at us, and we used that information to help to keep the campus safe and accessible. And I'd like to think that one of the achievements that we managed was to correctly balance the need for students to have that very personal face-to-face instruction that has made this institution so successful while still keeping everybody safe. And it was a heavy lift, and the students really came forward. They really worked hard to help us to prevent the spread of the disease beyond a reasonable amount. And it was very successful all the way through. The fall semester, after we had sent everybody home in the spring, one university after another started closing their doors and going full-time on Zoom. And students would come up to me and say, are we going to have to close? And I would always say, not if I can help it. And so we managed to stay open for the entire semester and gave students the kind of education that they were hoping for and really deserved.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure, going back to what we were talking about, feeling lonely, a sense of loneliness in the position, I'm sure it was that much more accentuated. Dr. LaPree, turning to you, you got here in 2022, just a few months after I got here, so I always felt connected with you, feeling like we were learning the campus layout at the same time. Obviously, we have very different jobs. But as you reflect on these past 3 years, what progress are you the most proud of in terms of advancing the university's strategic goals? And then please talk about some of the obstacles that you feel like you've been overcoming to advance the university's initiatives.
I feel like it's been a really busy 3 years, and some of it is advancing a lot of the initiatives that my predecessors had started. For instance, Blackwell Hall, that's really exciting that we're this far down the line. We were able to secure more funding for that to make sure that it's going to turn out to be this really terrific campus asset. And as Dr. Janet said, you know, we've been really fortunate with some of the capital funding, even just since I've gotten here. I think we've really leaned into high impact practices, which again, both of my predecessors had sort of started SU, that the community had really believed in this idea that the way we best serve our students is by giving them these hands-on, fabulous experiences so that they can see and they can learn by doing, and I'm really proud of some of the progress we've made on that front. But I think one thing that if I look back on the last 3 years that I'm really excited about is how much we're continuing to do with the community and really leaning into, as a regional comprehensive institution, what is our purpose? And part of our main purpose is to serve this region, to create workforce, to bring students here who will hopefully want to stay on the Eastern Shore, and whether it's working with local government or whether it's trying to create these pathways for students. Like we have students who have been interning at Wallops, and we've created MOUs with different organizations to really solidify that SU isn't an island, right? We are in Salisbury. We are part of Salisbury. We are part of Wicomico County. We are part of the Eastern Shore, and we take that role really seriously. So I'm excited about a lot of the momentum we have on that front. So that's been a lot of fun. Obstacles? Money.
Yeah.
State budget isn't fabulous, right? So it's prioritizing. It's knowing that you have these wonderful things you want to do and you really believe in what it's going to do for students, but it's certainly it's a challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Let's go all the way back to the beginnings of this institution when it was called the Maryland State Normal School, which was a 2-year college for elementary teachers. It was designed to educate future elementary teachers. As you guys look back on it, and obviously I'm sure you've talked about this before publicly or in interviews at different times, but how do you think starting as a normal school set the tone for academic excellence? And what lessons from those early days do you think maybe continue to guide how this university prepares students for careers and maybe civic life? Dr. White, let's start with you.
Starting as a normal school, of course, the institution was very focused on teaching and learning, teaching the teachers. And I think that that culture has really persisted at the university for a long, long time. When I first came, I spent my first 100 days going around talking and listening to as many people as I could, and I asked them about their jobs, and they said the absolute favorite part of their job was the students. And they said, I love my job. I would never quit my job. The best part is the students. I could be paid a little bit more, but it was really the focus on the students. And I'm not sure if people in science and business and other departments really think about the way that the institution started and that culture that persisted. But I think probably it had something to do with where we are now.
Yeah. Dr. Lepre, what ways do you think that maybe the teacher training legacy that Dr. White was talking about could still influence the university's emphasis on mentorship and student success today?
Absolutely. I absolutely think that's part of it. And actually, Karen Olmsted is out here somewhere. And one of the things, when I very first started, she was the provost at the time, and we were chatting about what does a normal school even mean, right? And today it maybe doesn't hold the same meaning as it did then. And what she shared with me that she had discovered is that it really meant that we were the norm of excellence. And the normal school was supposed to be this exemplar of what excellence looked like in teacher education. And I think that's it. For me, that's what it feels like. And I think that pervades a lot of what we do at this institution across all the different majors, is this feeling that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it to be the example, of what quality education looks like. And I think mentorship is a huge part of that. As he said, our faculty, our staff, everybody just raves about the meaningfulness of working with our students. And I think that's that spirit of excellence that considers.
Dr. Dudley Eschbach, I see some students out there, and I guess as we are going through this celebration of the Centennial year, what would you recommend to students to try and grab onto for these lessons that both Dr. White and Dr. Lepre were talking about what the university's origins mean to maybe today and maybe even the future of this institution? What would you tell them?
Well, when I was president, and we get the question about, the transition from the normal school, I would say, yes, we used to be normal once. We were normal once. I wanted to say, as I was listening to my colleagues, the teaching profession is horribly undervalued in this country. Now, that's not true in many countries, and when I was a kid, you revered your teachers. And everybody, many of us wanted to be teachers. It was one of the reasons that one of the first new facilities we got here was the Teacher Education and Technology Center, Conway Hall, okay? Because, and it was named after the gentleman who graduated from Salisbury University and was a school principal and became head of the help me out with the committee name. You're the newbie on this. Appropriations. How could I forget that? Yeah. He was head of the Appropriations Committee, which of course did not hurt us as we were trying to get some better funding. But, I just had to make a political statement here that I feel one of the greatest problems that the country has today is that not enough value is placed on education, from preschool right through to advanced degrees. And somehow we have to do something about that. I would periodically meet with all of the Eastern Shore school superintendents when I was president, and they would say, we have a teacher shortage. And I would say, there's nothing about that profession that if it were paid appropriately, right, you would have more people choosing to go into teaching. It is a noble profession. I do think that if we can't better understand, because colleges and universities are taking a lot of flack today for being too expensive and is it worthwhile, we have got to underscore the importance of education. And to get to the last aspect of your question, for the students that are here, how many here are students? Are you getting extra credit or something for being here? Were you coerced? What's that? Oh, okay. I would just, get as much education yourselves as you can afford in terms of money, but in terms of your time as well, because it will pay off. Especially in today's world, you don't know where you're going to end up. You might think you're preparing for this career. You might major in Spanish as an undergrad, as I did, and have your parents say you'll never find a job, right? But I think that is really the key to the future of our current students and the entire nation.
Well, as the son of a preschool teacher and a music teacher, I appreciate those comments very much. And I think your comments sort of perfectly segue into the next part of this, and that's where we are today as a campus. And as you mentioned, institutions of higher learning have faced harsh criticisms lately. And, here are some of them, but obviously they're not all of them. We have lost touch. We're too liberal. We're too elite. We're too expensive. And a college degree isn't necessary for a job anymore. So we'll start with you, Dr. Lepre, because these are questions that you're facing today. How would you respond to the current critique of higher education in America today?
Well, I think Dr. Janet just spoke to some of the things, right, that we're all grappling with. I don't know. I've always thought that what we do is a joy, right? And what we're able to do, bringing students in, preparing them for whatever success looks like for their future careers, is really important, right? And statistics will still show that many of the people who criticize higher education, their companies still require a bachelor's degree. They still are looking at this bachelor's degree, or sometimes even a master's degree, as the sort of baseline, right, for what is needed. And, I hear all the comments. Not everybody does need a college education. 100%. There are fabulous careers that you can go into that do not require, a college degree, and we should applaud that, and we should support that, and we should encourage students to go into, or young people to go into whatever career, fulfills them. But for many, and those who want the experience, who want that civically engaged, thoughtful educational experience that you can get at a college or university, we should be able to provide that, and we should be able to have the open conversations and be able to agree to disagree, but provide the safe, accessible outlet for people who want that. But for someone who's lived it for her entire career, pretty much, there's something that a college degree, they grow up while they're here. There's an experience that you can't get other places, and I believe in what we do. But it's we all watch the news.
Right.
It's an incredibly difficult conversation.
Well, that's what's interesting about public discourse in 2025 is that there's a perception of what's going on and then a reality, and sort of oftentimes filtered through the lens of social media and various media outlets that weren't here 20 years ago. So as we think about, with hindsight, based on experiences, or just projection on how we get through these tough times, what do you think is the best way for universities to communicate that value proposition to the public, both for parents and for students?
Me?
Yeah.
Again?
I'll open the floor.
I'll give you one, and then I'm gonna pass to my colleague. My past life, I was a journalist.
Yep.
And what I was always taught as a journalist is don't tell, show. show examples of what it is that you're doing. And I think the best way that higher education can defend itself is not to stand on a pulpit and scream, we're doing a good job. Let the students and their success speak for itself. Our job is to get that out there, is to get those stories out there and show the impact of what an education like Salisbury's does for a student. For me, it's just showing. It's showing the examples.
Dr. White.
It's easy for people to understand money, and it's still true that if you go to college and get a degree, on average, you'll earn $1 million more over the course of your career than somebody who doesn't. But probably more important is that higher education opens a lot of doors that would be closed to you otherwise. And I think that I agree that if you want to be a contractor or an electrician or a plumber or whatever, you can do that and you can have a fantastic life and a fantastic career. But it's opening those doors, which especially for students who are undecided, which these days is most, really provides the value for their higher education. I also would say that some of the criticisms that you mentioned are true, or at least partly true. And this is nothing new. Higher education has been under pressure from the outside to change the way it does business from the very beginning. Higher education has been in this country for nearly 400 years, and in the beginning, it was all about teaching Greek, Latin, philosophy, and mathematics, right? And that changed over time to include business and science. It changed even more after Sputnik to really accelerate the development of science and scientific research. In the late 60s, I credit Ronald Reagan and his interactions with the University of California when he was governor for putting a bigger focus on workforce preparedness. And so we have always been under external pressure to change. So this is just more of the same. And universities are a little bit like aircraft carriers. They don't turn on a dime. And that's a good thing most of the time. But we will change gradually, and we will change in the best interests of our students.
Dr. Dudley Ashbach, final thoughts on this topic.
What they said. But also, I find it really small-minded when people bash higher education. I don't know if any of you watch the Bill Maher show. I occasionally will watch his show, and he's one who fairly repeatedly will put down higher education. Of course, it's easy for him to say. He went to an Ivy League institution and is making millions of dollars. So I agree with what my colleagues have said, but I think it's not well understood that getting a college education, it's not just about getting a job and making more money, although it's very true. The data show with a college education, your lifetime earning power is much greater, but it's about the quality of your life too. And it is about we only have one of these lives, well, unless you believe that, well, anyway. But the point is, when you're here, students, you're here and you're having to take classes that you probably would never choose to take. You didn't have to agree so readily. They're like, oh, yeah. But that is the whole point. It's about discovery. We don't know what we don't know, right? And so when you have to take certain courses, you may find something that you love. You may change your mind about what you want to do or not. But it's difficult to try to explain the value of a higher education. But you have to look carefully at the critics who are out there. I have written a letter to Bill Maher, and he has not responded. I have asked to be on his show to come talk about the importance of higher ed, so stay tuned.
Let me know if he calls you. University presidents are responsible for keeping institutions that they oversee moving forward. And, I don't want to presume how you guys are feeling all the time, but I'm sure if I were in your shoes, I would feel like most of my time is spent thinking about what's coming next and what could happen and what's around the corner. But the one thing that's remained constant at Salisbury University over the last 100 years is the focus on putting students first. So how can we assure moving forward that students remain at the center of the conversations that we're having all throughout the campus community? Dr. White.
I would say that the most important thing that we can do is listen to students. Sit down with them one-on-one and talk with students and listen to their responses. I tried to do this occasionally when I was president. I would go down to the dining commons and sit down. I would ambush a group of students and sit down with them and introduce myself and ask them how things were going. And they were remarkably candid about what was going well and what was going not so well. So I think to stay student-focused, you have to listen to the students first.
Dr. LaPree.
Ditto, right? Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to be really intentional about it. And I think that's really, I think that's what Chuck is also saying is don't expect them to come to you all the time. You have to go meet them where they are. And whether it's in the dining hall, I have a student advisory group. My poor husband, whenever we're out to dinner, if I find out that our waitress or server is a Salisbury student, I'm like, so, tell me, how do you like it? And then it's always, parking is terrible. I'm like, yes, I know. Other than parking. But I think you do. You have to really intentionally seek that feedback out and then be prepared for what they tell you. And don't be upset if they tell you that something's not going well or they're not happy about something. Okay, good. Now let's figure out how are we going to work together to solve that problem. But I think yes, it's exactly what he just said is listen to them and recognize that this is as much their campus as it is ours. This is their lived experience, and you may disagree with their interpretation of something, but they're telling you how they feel. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, and certainly anyone who's in this job, to recognize that we serve them. That is our job. Yeah. That is our job.
For each of you personally, can you remember a time that maybe a student helped shape, maybe not alter, but perhaps shape a decision that you made during your tenure? Start with you, Dr. Natalie Ashbach.
I felt that I had a lot to learn from students. And as Chuck and Lynn have said, the important thing is to listen, is to be a good listener. And this is maybe a small thing, but I think the university during my tenure became somewhat greener because students were telling me, look, this is what we want. Something as simple as no longer having trays over at the dining hall. Now, do we still not have trays or trays back? Because there was a lot of waste. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. It's kind of a small thing. But no, there's less food waste, less paper that's thrown away, etc. So that's one small example. This university, without students, there is no Salisbury University. I greatly enjoyed, I'm going to say 99.9% of all of our students. Salisbury has great students. We had them, they were wonderful students then. We did change the look of the campus a little bit. When I came to Salisbury, you might find it interesting, the majority of the students here were from the Eastern Shore. And we made a concerted effort through admissions and enrollment management to get the word out about Salisbury University and how great it is by recruiting more students from what we call the Western Shore and other parts of the country. And it's all about the students. Students are delightful. The parents, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But I found the students were wonderful to work with and had good advice for me.
Dr. White, how about for you?
I remember we had some problems with some crimes that were committed on campus. And we have a lot of cameras on campus, which usually keeps the crime rate very, very low. But we had a problem. And students came to me and they said they wanted more cameras on campus. And I could hardly believe it. I mean, you want us to follow you, wherever you go on campus? And they said yes. And so we did. And so sometimes students will have advice, good advice, that might seem counterintuitive to leadership, but we took them seriously, and we put more cameras up, and we caught the guy.
Dr. LaPree, just looking back in the last 3 years.
So one of the things I think that this cohort of students that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last couple of years, they're very concerned about health and wellness, and they want the kind of facilities that help them with that. And while certainly there are some spaces on campus that shall remain nameless, that need to be renovated, they wanted pickleball courts, they wanted, an updated weight, those sorts of things. And very happily over the last couple of years, we've been able to say, okay, I had no idea, right, that you might want that. And sometimes it's literally that. They say something to you in passing, and you think, gosh, I never thought about that. Let's move in that direction. And so we've made some updates to the rec facilities we have on campus lately, and it's really entirely student-driven, which is exciting. So.
Let's turn to looking ahead, because any part of a celebration that is acknowledging and celebrating a moment in history or a milestone in history is as much about looking ahead as it is looking back. For each of you, as you look at what this institution has accomplished over 100 years and what it's faced and perhaps overcome, what are your greatest fears moving forward, and what are your greatest hopes? Dr. White, let's start with you.
I think my greatest fear has to do with the declining demographics of traditional age, college-age students, and the consolidation of colleges that's going on across the country. I don't want to see Salisbury become underattended or undervalued or under-resourced. And I don't think that will happen. I think we're in really good shape, but it's something that happens to even very good universities across the country. So I think that's one of the biggest threats. But if we stay true to our values, if we stay true to our students, then I think this university will continue to thrive for another 100 years.
Dr. Dudley Eschbach, let's turn to you.
I feel very, very positive about the future of this institution because of the students, faculty, staff, alumni that are so committed here. And so I feel very positive about the future. I do worry that the political environment is such that there are all these attempts to micromanage what's going on at public and private institutions. And, autonomy, I think, for our institutions is very important. We may not always agree with the public servants, politicians. We will listen. But there's a lot to be said for the independence and autonomy of our universities. And I'm glad the lady to my left is now dealing with the current environment, and I am not.
Thanks, Janet. Thank you very much.
Well, turning to you, Dr. LaPree, what are your thoughts?
Yes, right. Both of those things are certainly things that people ask all the time. What keeps you up at night, and those sorts of things. And these are things I think we need as a community to be thinking about and addressing. Fear is almost the wrong word, right? It's not so much that I'm afraid. It's we need to be thinking about this, and we need to be planning for it. If I were going to say something was a fear, it's that people will become so depressed, right, and sort of overwhelmed by what some of the obstacles may be. And you mentioned social media, a little while before, and because of the speed with which information is disseminated, and it's not always accurate, and it's so incendiary most of the time. I feel it too, that sometimes you're just like, oh my goodness, where do we even begin? Right? How do we even start to talk about this? And I think this is an amazing institution. We are in absolutely fantastic shape. I mean, look around, right? I mean, it's amazing. But sometimes when all you hear is this is bad and this is bad and the budget is bad and that politics, all the things, it can weigh on you. And so I think my fear is how do we cut through that so that we can all the smart people we have here working can keep their eye on exactly what we've talked about, which is we're doing an amazing thing. And yeah, there's all this noise out there. let the noise be noise, and we're going to do our jobs. And if we do that.
And I'll pose this to the three of you. Do you think that, I guess that makes it so much more important to stay true and to be focused on the mission of leadership and where the university is going. Talk about how you can do that in a very loud and crowded world. Just briefly, just real quick, for Dr. Dudley Eschbach and Dr. White, maybe advice is now outsiders, how you would advise Dr. Lepre to sort of keep
Please
that
do.
focus on weeding out all of this noise that exists now that perhaps didn't during your tenure.
Well, I think she's doing an incredible job. Okay, you've got to be present on campus, have a presence, and it's tricky. Everybody wants a little piece of you, so you have to create these opportunities so that you're known on campus. But you have to spend a heck of a lot of time off campus, in Annapolis and in Baltimore. The powers that be in system office, alumni groups around the country want to hear from the president of the institution. You really need to be out there. And so I think, and she doesn't need my advice. She's got it figured out. But the main thing is you need to be a good time manager, to be able to make room for those things that are important, not just in your life. And let's face it, you sacrifice a lot of your personal time and life when you're the president. But she's an excellent time manager, and it's one of the reasons I'm so positive about the future of the institution.
No president can transform a university by themselves. And obviously, it's not just your job about where this institution heads as it goes into the future, however scary or however hopeful. What role do you think the campus community, whether the faculty, the staff, the students, the alumni, what role does everybody have in this campus community for shaping the future of this campus community? Dr. White, let's start with you.
Well, everybody has a responsibility to row the ship in the same direction. Fortunately, that's what's happening here. I agree with Dr. Janet that Dr. Lepre is doing a terrific job, and I would say that not only does a president have to be there in person in events to look people in the eye, but has to be there electronically as well, on social media, making videos, communicating with parents, and that is one of the important ways that we can transcend some of the noise. But as long as faculty, staff, students, leadership are all working together to push in the same direction, then I think we'll be very, very successful.
Dr. Lepre, any thoughts?
Well, first, this is exactly why you can do this job. I mean, I will say, right, it's like when you have people who are this supportive and you can learn from, right, if any of us are good leaders, it's because we have good mentors and we have good examples that we can follow, and I have two extraordinary ones. How does everybody, and I think this is really my answer. How do we do this? Everybody does it together. Right now we're working on our new strategic plan. It's not my plan. Do I have a part? Sure, yes. Do I have an idea of where we should? Yes, absolutely, based on what I'm hearing from all the people who are helping us. And the responsibility is speak up, show up, right? I can only lead or provide vision or work on a strategic plan if people come to the table and say, I care enough about what we're doing to have my voice being heard. And so I think the message that and I know Christy, who's one of our strategic plan chairs, is glad I'm saying this out loud. Please show up, right? Like to everybody, right? The students, the faculty, staff, the alumni, everybody has a voice in this process. And as long as they feel heard, and I hope we do that. I hope I do that, right? I think we've all tried to do that. Then we're going to come out in the right place, because then we will all be rowing in the same direction, because everybody helped build the direction that we're rowing in. And it's tricky. It's easy to say here sitting on this podium, but it's important.
If I could say, when I came to the university 25 years ago now, 25 years ago, and that went like that, We had major issues with the larger community, the surrounding community. I felt the campus community was strong. And some of you who were with me back then, you remember the university was kind of perceived as being elitist, and people in the surrounding community said, oh, you know, these young people are partying in my backyard and they're not good neighbors, and the university's growing and infringing on our So I made a very conscientious effort to try to change that, because as a public university, even if we were not a public university, you want buy-in from your surrounding community. And that's not just because you want to do some fundraising, although that is part of it, but you know, Salisbury is not a huge city, and we are a big part. Salisbury University is a big part of the larger community. So we did some things, like we started the Fun Day, where you've just recently had did you call it Fun Day or? Okay. Yes, Fun Fest, where you brought people from the surrounding community and their kids, bring them onto campus, and just really let the larger community know, look, we have so many wonderful cultural events here, learning opportunities for everybody. You know, we spent a lot of effort working on those. We started a town gown committee and all that type of thing. I would say, were we 100% successful? No. But we did make some positive change, and I believe people understand now that this university is for a much larger community, not just the people who work and study here.
I have two questions left, and I appreciate everybody sticking it out. I know there's a lot of good things on Netflix, and I'm so happy that everybody was a part of this evening. But you know, the first question I want to ask is about this celebration, this Centennial, and then the last thing I want to ask you guys is about leadership as leaders. First question, here in this Centennial, try and capture the meaning of this moment in history for this institution. Celebrating 100 years, the impact, as you have all eloquently talked about so passionately, about what this place means in this community. But try and capture the meaning of this moment.
There's actually nothing magic about 100 years that isn't true about 101 or 105 or 150. Yeah. But it's a milestone that reminds people that we have been here for a very long time. And it gives people a sense of the permanence of the institution. Stores, shops may come and go, but the university has been here for a very long time and will be here for a very long time to come. And I think that's probably the most important thing about a Centennial celebration, is just to give people, remind people and give them a sense of the permanence of the institution.
Dr. Dudley Eschbach.
Yes, Chuck just said it's a long time, but as you know, as universities go, 100 years, we're really we're a young institution, right? So, I mean, I'd love to come back 200 years from now. I don't likely plan to do that, but you know, if we were able to do that, then you could, 300 years. The university's still young. It's still growing in a number of key ways, in quality, and some years, depending on whether there's been a pandemic or not, in the size and quality of the students, faculty, and staff who study, who live and work here. So it is a time to stop, reflect, think about, yes, this was once a normal school. How many were in that first class?
105. Thank you.
How many?
105.
105. 105 in that initial class. So certainly there have been many changes. We've become this major comprehensive university, now known well beyond the immediate region. And so I just think it's about celebrating and recognizing that perhaps some of the greatest things for this institution are maybe still ahead and likely during President LaPrie's administration.
Dr. LaPrie.
Yes, I think that's it. I love the way that Dr. Janet just spoke to that. It's this moment for us to pause and reflect about all the things that we've done, the challenges that the institution has had, right? There were moments when they thought it was going to close, and it sort of lagged, and then enrollment has gone up and down. And I think it's good for perspective, too, because if we never sort of look back at the past and say, this isn't the first challenge that SU has ever had, this isn't the first, crisis, right? We've been through bigger things before, and we've come out stronger every single time. And then it's that moment of saying, yeah, we did all that. And doesn't that give us energy to think about what we should be doing next? Because it's very much about, one of the previous questions about we're always looking forward. And I think that's maybe part of human nature. It's certainly part of, I think, our jobs is if all we did was sort of stand still, I think we're failing. We can't just stand still, because if we stand still, we're going to do what Chuck just mentioned. We're going to go out of business and all the things, and we'll be consolidated, like other institutions that are struggling. It's where should we go? And isn't it exciting to think about all that's happened, which will be a drop in the bucket for what we're going to be able to do in the future?
I want you to put your leadership hats on. Obviously, you have yours on all the time, and you guys are very, very adept to wearing that cap, if you will. But, part of what, a massive part of what this institution does is pass down knowledge to new generations so they can go on and, complete their part of the circle, do the work, pass down that knowledge to the next group. So as leaders, if you could leave behind a single value or principle for future leaders, including the ones that are here in class in the back row, what would that message be, that value, that principle about leadership? Dr. White, Dr. Dudley Eschbach, and then we'll finish with Dr. Lepre.
I think it's pretty simple. Listen first, and then when you make decisions, make them based on clearly understood values and principles. Because if you do that, then your decisions will stand the test of time.
And you said, do the work. Again, thinking about students first. Life isn't easy. It's hard. You have to do the work. You have to be true to your values, your principles, as Chuck has said, but you got to work hard and persevere. When you get frustrated, whether it's with a faculty member or a parent or whatever it may be, this too shall pass. At 72 years old, I can look back and I think about, the saying, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. Most of it is small stuff. Even in the moment, you think you're facing something insurmountable, just persevere, work hard. I'm sorry I tend to gear most of my comments towards our students because I'm counting on the young people and the current students to get our country on the right track and kind of keep it moving forward. That's where my hopes rest with our future students.
Finally, Dr. Lepre.
I think what I would love to say to anyone who's going out into the world thinking about higher ed leadership, and I know many of the students in the room are in higher ed leadership, remain relentlessly, optimistically hopeful. Be proud of your institution. Be proud of what your students are doing. Be proud of what your faculty are accomplishing. Just be proud of the people you've surrounded yourself with. And if life is full of change, nobody likes change. Change is hard. Even when change is good, change is hard and it's difficult. But if you believe that you are changing and innovating because what you're going to get at the end of that change is something beautiful, then that's how you get through it. And if you always remain that hopeful, optimistic, sometimes cheerleader self as a leader, I think that's what I would leave you with. Never lose sight of the fact that in the face of the noise, in the face of all the things, boy, what you get to do is phenomenal. And we're lucky. We're very lucky to be able to do what we do and to be a part of a community like this one.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you so much for the honor of being able to chat with you about sort of what's behind the curtain, what's in front of us, and certainly what this institution has accomplished over the last 100 years. Just want to, I'll introduce each of you. Please give a round of applause. Thank you to Dr. Charles White. Thank you to Dr. Carolyn Lepre. And thank you to Dr. Janet Dudley Ushbach. My name is Brian Russo from Delmarva Public Media. It's been an honor. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful night.